Good morning. And happy Mother's Day. Welcome to our Unitarian Universalist Church of Reading's in-person and virtual worship service. My name is Charlene Reynolds-Santo. I'm a member of the worship arts team, and I use she, her pronouns. We choose to share our pronouns because we know people of all genders are holy, whole, and loved. Whoever you are, wherever you are from, whoever you love, whatever your faith tradition, you are welcome here. All are welcome here as we gather to create an understanding, welcoming, and family-friendly community where we nurture and explore individual spirituality, work to build a committed and loving community, and to help heal the world. For those of us here for the first time, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. Please visit our webpage at uureading.org to learn more about this beloved community and connect with our staff. And for those here in the sanctuary, feel free to speak to any one of us involved in today's service in Fellowship Hall afterwards. If you are watching this service online during its initial broadcast at 10 a.m. on May 12th, please join the Zoom with AJ Heidkamp immediately after the service. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you, Charlene. Good morning.
Good morning.
It is so good to see you all this morning. My name is Reverend Laura Solomon. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am the minister here at UUCR, and it is a privilege to serve this community and the world with you. As we settle in for worship this morning, I invite you to take a breath. Allow yourself to arrive. As we center ourselves with these words from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Today, God is running late, trying to find their seat, scanning the room for someone they know or someone they don't. God's feeling evangelical, but not in a judgy way. Mysterious, but not manipulative. God can't stop thinking about the James Webb Telescope and the possibility that time is not linear, which God might have guessed from the never-ending urgency of some upcoming election and the likelihood that sometime next week Halloween candy will show up in the grocery store. God is tired of grief and white supremacy and the warming of the oceans. And it's hot. Why hasn't the climate-friendly air conditioning been installed yet, God wonders. And of course, we're all like, no kidding, God, can't you do something about that? But God's hearing aid batteries ran out, and they haven't had time to order more. Or that's what they say when asked, and can hear the question, but really, that last emergency room visit maxed their credit cards, and their partner's been working DoorDash for some extra cash, but it's just not enough, and really, God just wants to be present and stop worrying about everything and sing and breathe and laugh. From the back, a Black woman wearing a hat and a small Black child are seated in a church pew. We got you, God, we say. We'll settle in and we'll be present and we'll sing. We'll tell stories and breathe deep. We'll remember ourselves and offer whole galaxies of gratitude for all this beauty. For still blooming salvia and full apple trees, zucchini bread in the U.S. women's soccer team, for protest letters and entire villages of people saying, "You are safe here, God. Your creation is not yet done creating you." Let us worship together. We light our chalice this morning with Unitarian Universalists all around the globe. I invite you to kindle in your heart the flame you need this morning, the flame of truth, of community, of commitment to love and to justice. Please join me in our chalice lighting words. In the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment, we gather this day. May the flame we now kindle be to us a symbol of the holiness we seek. Each week we recite our children's affirmation as a reminder of the most important elements of who we are. I would love some helpers for our children's affirmation. Thank you, Ethan. Ingrid, good morning. You guys ready to help me out? We are Unitarian Universalists, the Church of the open mind, the loving heart, and the helping hands. Thank you. Please rise in body or in spirit. We will sing our opening hymn, number 1018, in your teal hymnal. Come and go with me.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
That's right. I invite anyone who would like to be able to see some pictures better to come forward for a story we are going to create together today. Thank you, Kimberly. So we're going to work together to tell a story. We're going to start with a picture of a king. So once upon a time, there was a king. There's our king. And he lived with a queen. Of course, thank you. And they lived in a big castle. How did you know? It's like, oh my gosh. Every fantasy story has a king and a queen and a castle, and Ethan has read a lot of fantasy stories. Then maybe there's a village, and what do you think happens from there? There are people in the houses in the village, and probably somebody needs help, right? And then somebody provides the help. Who do you think gives the help? A knight maybe provides the help. Exactly. And then do you think the story has a happy ending? Yeah, probably. They all lived happily ever after. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably right. So if we were talking about the story of Sleeping Beauty, then it could start this way, right? That there was a king and a queen, and they lived in a castle, and then there was a witch, and she cast a spell, and then they all lived happily ever after in the end, right? That's the short version. If we were going to tell the story of Rapunzel or Frozen, it would be pretty much the same thing, wouldn't it? Yep, they all lived happily ever after in the end. So we're going to tell this story again, but we're going to imagine it a little bit differently. We're going to start the same way. Once upon a time, there was a king. Take a look at that king. What do you notice about that king? He's robotified. He's part robot. He's a cyborg. Yep, very true. And so this king had a queen that he lived with. Now she looks like an alien, and they lived in a castle. Oh, this castle. It's a little futuristic. Oh my gosh, Ethan, you're like a plant. It's amazing. So, what would you imagine could happen in a story like this? What do you think, Ingrid? Dramatic stuff could happen in a story like this. I believe that is true. We don't even know. What do you think? It could be like a remade version of Star Trek. Absolutely. So we've got a person, a king here, who's part robot, and a woman who looks like she's part alien living in this futuristic castle, and it expands our imagination immensely. We've got one more story. Well, let's see. So this time we start with a queen. There's a queen. What? It's a fancy queen. And this queen has a wife. She has a queen that lives with her. She's also a pretty fancy queen, isn't she? And then they live in this castle. What could you imagine would happen with a story like this? We've got a queen living with another queen in this futuristic castle. It's sort of like a magic castle. So do we think that the same story that happened here with the king and the queen in this castle, is that going to happen with this story down here, or do you think it's going to be different? It's going to be different. Why? Because there's two queens this time. What do you think, Gavin? Yep, it's a floating castle that looks like it just came out of the water. I would say that in this story, there are things that could happen that we probably haven't even imagined yet. We don't even know what the world might look like around this story, or even this one for that matter, right? But this one, we can kind of guess what is going to happen. So this speaks to how important it is that we use our imagination to reach outside of what we know and imagine entirely new stories. When we create bigger, better stories, then we can imagine a new and different future. Bless you. Thank you all for talking with me today. We are going to sing our children to their classes.
As you go your way in peace, as you go your way in peace.
We take time during our service to light our candles of community, peace, and justice. We light our red candle to signify our interconnection. Wherever you are in time and space, newcomer or longtime member here in the sanctuary or joining us virtually, we light this candle holding you in love. We particularly hold in our heart the family of Beverly Everett, who died on Thursday this week. Information about memorial arrangements for Beverly are forthcoming. As we light this candle, I invite you to speak aloud the name or names of people on your mind and heart today, that we may call them fully into this space. We light our blue candle of peace for all the places worldwide where people live with the threat of war and violence. Mother's Day was traditionally a day of advocating for peace. And so today we breathe. We hold in our hearts all the mothers, children who are suffering. All the mothers who are suffering. In Gaza, in Ukraine, in the Middle East. We pray for the safety of all. And we light our yellow candle of justice. May all people everywhere live their lives in freedom. And may we each do our part in the work for justice and liberation for all in our global community. As we recommit ourselves to this work of love and justice, let us each voice this commitment by saying amen. Will you join me in a moment of prayer? This prayer is adapted from one written by Amy Young. For all the mothers, to those who gave birth this year, we celebrate with you. To those who have lost a child, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stains, we appreciate you. To those celebrating the joy of being a grandparent, we delight with you. To those who experienced loss through miscarriage, through failed adoptions, through children running away, we mourn with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes and prods, tears and disappointment, we are with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make it harder than it is. To those who are foster moms and mentor moms and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment, heartache, distance from your children, we sit with you. To those who have lost their mothers, we grieve with you. To those who experienced abuse at the hands of your mother, we see you. We acknowledge your experience. To those who lived through driving tests, medical tests, and the overall testing of motherhood, we are better having you in our midst. To those who have aborted children, we remember them and you on this day. To those who are single and long to be married and mothering your own children, we mourn that life has not turned out the way you longed for it to be. To those who step-parent, we walk with you on those complex paths. To those who envisioned lavishing love on grandchildren, yet that dream is not to be, we grieve with you. To those who will have emptier nests in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you. To those who place children up for adoption, we remember how you hold that child in your heart. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. This Mother's Day, we journey with you. Mothering is not for the faint of heart. And we have warriors in our midst. We are with you. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like to honor through lighting a silent candle, you are invited to come forward now.
Our reading this morning starts with a definition of Afrofuturism. Knowing this is a word many are unfamiliar with and a word with many definitions. Afrofuturism is a cultural, aesthetic philosophy of science and history that explores the intersection of African diaspora culture with science and technology. Yatasha L. Womack, writer of Afrofuturism, the world of Black sci-fi and fantasy culture, defines it as an intersection of imagination, technology, the future, and liberation, or a way of imagining possible futures through a Black cultural lens. And putting it another way, Afrofuturism is about forward thinking as well as backward thinking, while having a distressing past, a distressing present, but still looking forward to a thriving future. The book, Afrofuturism, A History of Black Futures, states, Afrofuturism deepens the meaning of making a way out of no way. Although Afrofuturism methodologies point to the overcoming of racial discrimination, its lessons are human and universal. It provides an identity and tools for activists, intellectuals, and creatives who envision new worlds. Whether in visual arts, literature, music, or speech, Afrofuturists are creating new possibilities, pointing to a future where white supremacy holds no power, and where new ideas based on the possibility of liberation, invention, freedom, and joy travel freely.
With that definition in mind, I offer you a piece of poetry from the book, The Future of Black, Afrofuturism, Black Comics, and Superhero Poetry. It's called Friendly Skies, or Black Woman Speaks Herself into God, by Ashley M. Jones. We're taxiing at an airport named after American President Ronald Reagan. People tell me he was an American hero. Sometimes labels are jumbled in the big dark bag we call manifest destiny. Sometimes things get lost in its velvet mouth. As we move across the land in a machine built for sky, we wait for the flight attendant to tell us how to be safe, how to will ourselves alive 30,000 feet in the air if we find ourselves falling to an inevitable end, how to build a raft from breath alone to face a gulping sea. Our attendant, Valerie, is black. Her braids hang a holy rope in a high ponytail, her eyes divinely familiar. When the disassembled voice booms over the plain speakers, we see her mouth moving in time with its words. To ensure your safety, she says, secure your mask before helping others. Her lips make the shape of our salvation. Reader, this might be how you felt sitting in the movie theater's strobe-lit box when you saw Black Panther, when you realized a black person could feel as big as God, could save the whole world and make it home in time for dinner, run a whole country against no white background, could know the land and all its secrets and roam the afterworld, leisurely resting after a life of nothing colonized, after all the sweat of work done just for self, of work unstolen and unenslaved. And I know Valerie isn't God, but I also know that she is, standing here, commanding this voice we thought was faceless, using her earthly body to show us the way. Here, with her hands which will pour us fizzy drinks in our little plastic cups, usher trash from our laps into an unknown abyss, I know if this thing goes down in a fiery cocoon, she will part every sea to cradle us. She will speak to us through the fire. You are that you are.
Child, I know you're weary and your eyes want to close. The days are getting longer, you're not getting any stronger. Trust me, Mama knows. But lie in my arms while you're sleeping and think of the rivers you've crossed. I'll tell you the dreams I've been keeping for moments like this, when your hope is lost. Hear my song, it'll help you believe in tomorrow. Hear my song, it'll show you the way you can shine. Hear my song, it was made for the times when you don't know where to go. Listen to the song that I sing, you'll be fine. Child, I know you're frightened and your throat's parched and dry, but just trust in Mama's singing and the gift tomorrow's bringing. Trust it, don't ask why. Just lie in my arms and I'll tell you the things that you know but forget, the lies no one ever could sell you. I know that it's hard, but don't give up yet. my song. It'll help you believe in tomorrow. Hear my song. It'll show you the way you can shine. Hear my song. It was made for the times when you don't know where to go. Listen to the song that I sing. You'll be fine, 'cause I'll be singing, hold on, hold tight. I know it's dark right now, but just believe somehow that soon there will be light. Hold on, hold fast. That's not enough for some, but trust the light will come and we'll get past. You and Mama safe at last. Hear my song. It'll help us get through till tomorrow. Hear my song. It'll help us survive all the pain. Hear my song. It's the one thing I have that has never let me down. Listen to the song that I sing. Listen to the words in my heart. Listen to the hope I can bring, and we'll start to grow and shine. Listen to the song that I sing, and trust me, we'll be fine.
Amen. Whew. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Joe. As many of you know, our theme this month is pluralism, or the ways we draw our knowledge and wisdom and inspiration from various sources. From the fact that we are better, richer, more knowledgeable, and grounded when we celebrate our diversity in experience and culture and theology. I'm choosing this month to focus on fiction as a spiritual teacher, as a source of creativity and inspiration. Last week, I asked the question, how can we build a new world together if we can't imagine what it might look like? I think a lot about the ways our lives and our futures are limited by the fact that we so often fail to imagine how to act and be outside of what we know. Our failure to know how to imagine or know how deeply to imagine limits what is possible. Works of fiction, science fiction, and things like Afrofuturism particularly help me to engage this radical imagination. Like those pictures we used to tell the stories with the children this morning, New stories are generated when we have new images to look at. When the castles don't look like the castles built in medieval times. When the kings and queens don't look like the kings and queens of England in 1790, then we can engage a potential story where liberation is lived. There will be conflict, of course. Any good story has conflict, and we're not trying to dream up a utopia. Even in our fantasies, it's a pretty far stretch to imagine a time and place where there are no problems. But can we imagine what a world might look like if the givens of the world were different? I've seen pictures circulate the internet in the past several years that say they are meant to question our racial assumptions. Photographs of a white child looking at a huge display of dolls in which all of them are black. A white child unable to find a doll that looks like her. Or a picture of women in a nail salon getting pedicures. All the women in the chairs receiving the services are of Asian descent. All the women providing the pedicures are white. A woman of color sitting on a couch drinking a cup of tea. A white woman in a uniform pouring it. This is one way we can engage creative imagination, sure. The reversal of roles points out to us what we don't see, what we can't see because it is so pervasive in society around us. I hear this phenomenon referred to as the fish can't see the water in which it swims. Our culture is steeped in assumptions about the way things are and the way things have always been. Our culture and our world are steeped in givens. All of history, or all of what we have learned about our history, has brought us to this point. To see what is happening, what is right in front of us, would require being able to see with new eyes. But the reversal we see in those images, the white child having only black baby dolls to choose from, that is not the only type of imagination. We are still imagining a world with racial hierarchy, a world with the same social structure. We're just imagining it such that other people are on top. So what about a world, for example, without structural racism? What about a world with an entirely different history? Or what if at some point history had been interrupted? What about telling, sharing, hearing the story from an entirely different point of view? How many of you saw Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, a couple years ago? Many of you. This movie tells of a place in Africa that is one of the most technologically advanced nations on Earth. And while it's easy to imagine that this is just based in imagination, there are also arguments that elements of Wakanda that we see in this Marvel movie are representative of modern-day African politics, economics, cultures, and societies. It's easy for us to imagine an idealized white society. We see versions of it all the time in the adorable little small towns with friendly neighbors or magical castle lands served under a benevolent patriarchy. What if this idealized Wakanda is just another version of that? One that we who are white, immersed in American culture, are unable to even imagine. I return to that poem I shared earlier with its stanza reading, "Reader, This might be how you felt sitting in the movie theater's strobe-lit box when you saw Black Panther. When you realized a Black person could feel as big as God, could save the world and make it home in time for dinner, run a whole country against no white background, could know all the land and its secrets and roam the afterworld, leisurely resting after a life of nothing colonized, after all the sweat of work done just for self, of work unstolen and unenslaved. What would it take for us to imagine that kind of life? What would it take for us to imagine that kind of future? I recently read a young adult book titled Soul of the Sea. It's a book by Nigerian Welsh author Natasha Bowen about Simi, a young mamiwata, a mermaid-like creature who saves the souls of enslaved Africans who die at sea during the Middle Passage. She breaks protocol when she saves an enslaved boy thrown from a ship and he lives. This book centers the experience of the enslaved people firmly within the context of West African culture and Yoruba folklore and religion. It takes on the stories of the lives of the people who were taken by slavery, but centers their experience and story within the rich cultures they were taken from. This type of imagination is necessary. It is, quite frankly, how we need to move forward to survive. Whether we call it mythology or folklore or religion, this imagining gives us what we need to create meaning and to imagine a better world. An important part of why this is so radical is because the history we learn, when we learn it, has been whitewashed. So often, our sources of historical information sanitize the racism, the violence, the people on the other side of the brutality, and also erase the success, the culture, the wisdom and tradition and thriving of the people of color existing in the world prior to the violence. An example I think of particularly on this is that of Black Wall Street. How many of you have heard of Black Wall Street? Some of you. Prior to 1921, the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, was a thriving city and community of African American businesses. Segregation laws prevented Black residents from shopping in white neighborhoods, so they had created a self-sustaining, self-funded community that kept their money circulating within the district. There were restaurants and barber shops and clothing stores, jewelry stores and movie theaters, doctors, dentists, and lawyers' offices. It was considered the wealthiest Black enclave in the nation. And then in 1921, a white mob, armed rioters, many deputized by police, burned down homes, libraries, hospitals, businesses, churches, and more. Historians estimate the death toll might have been as high as 300, and more than 10,000 Black people were left homeless as a result of the Tulsa Race Massacre. If you want some really interesting history, the involvement of Richard Lloyd Jones, co-founder of All Souls Unitarian Church in Tulsa, is worth knowing and grappling with. So often, we don't hear about the pain. It wasn't until about 5 years ago. But we also don't hear about the thriving. I had never heard of Black Wall Street. And had I not gone to Tulsa, Oklahoma on a trip specifically to learn about our racial history, I don't know that I ever would have engaged with that topic as deeply as I did. But when we talk about imagination and creating a better world, I believe we can use as a starting ground things that actually happened to imagine what could exist. I don't know that it's been written, but imagine a book about Black Wall Street had it continued to exist. What might have come of it? What brilliant minds, what discoveries, what explorations? How might history have been changed if this one thing had been different? While we can't recreate the past, I am grateful to authors who imagine and engage writing like Afrofuturism because they give me the capacity to engage that radical imagination. Octavia Butler, the mother of Afrofuturism, said, "There's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns." There's nothing new under the sun, but there are new suns. What if we are in a time of new suns? I'm working with a leadership coach and minister, Reverend Jake Morrill, who offers me interesting perspective and ways to think about ministry and leadership. To use Butler's analogy, he asks me to imagine, essentially, what it would be like to be living in a time of new suns. It requires questioning everything I believe to be true, to be given. If we use church as an example, if I continue to think about the way things have always been, I assume church works because we have committees that meet together once a month and discuss the work of the church. I assume church works because we meet every Sunday for a worship service in which there is a speaker and there are listeners, in which there is music and standing and sitting in pews. In that world, there is nothing new under the sun. But if I imagine a different sun, I wonder about church sometimes being silent, sacred gatherings, perhaps in church, in the pews, perhaps somewhere where you can hear the birds. If I imagine a different sun, I imagine committees meeting once a year or meeting as needed, or I imagine the work of committees being combined together in a big potluck meal where individual groups discuss their vision or strategy or concerns. If I imagine a different sun, I imagine that church is community service instead of worship. I can imagine that church is brunch and singing hymns. I can imagine that church is all ages, come as you are, move around from table to table and hear the wisdom of 6-year-olds and 96-year-olds, hear their thoughts on imagination and creativity while we color pictures, because art also feeds our souls. Adrienne Marie Brown says, imagination is one of the spoils of colonization, which in many ways is claiming who gets to imagine the future for a given geography. Losing our imagination is a symptom of trauma. What might the future we long for look like? Future under another sun. Part of the joy, the necessity of imagination is that it isn't grounded in reality. It isn't based in what can or should or will happen. It's based on what is possible, which shapes our expectation for what can be real. Amen.
Each Sunday, UUCR gives half the money received in the collection plate to a nonprofit organization that shares our UU values. It's a simple yet powerful way for each of us to help heal the world. Our Share the Plate recipient for the month of May is Reading Juneteenth Freedom Festival. Our congregation survives and thrives through the gifts of those who call this place their spiritual home. If you are here with us in the sanctuary, you may put your gift in the plate as it goes by. Otherwise, you may make a gift online or send a check. Please give as generously as you are willing and able to support the Reading Juneteenth Freedom Festival and the mission of UUCR. If this is your first time with us, please, your presence is gift enough.
I've been dreaming of friendly faces. I've got so much time to kill. Just imagine people laughing. I know that someday we will. And even if it's far away, get me through another day.
Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning,
And everything will be alright.
Cover me in sunshine.
From a distance, all these mountains are just some tiny hills. Wildflowers, they keep living while they're just standing still. I've been missing yesterday, but what if there's a better place?
Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning,
And everything will be alright.
Cover me in sunshine.
La 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 la. La 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 la.
Cover me in sunshine, shower me with good times. Tell me that the world's been spinning since the beginning, and everything will be alright. Cover me in sunshine.
Before I share this week's invitation, I wish to take a moment to acknowledge that this church exists and thrives because of its committed congregants. Thank you for the commitment you make today that allows for this beloved community to continue to thrive. Thank you for a successfully generous pledge drive. Thank you to A.J. Heidkamp for his unwavering commitment to our members and this church, and to his team members, Tracy Sawchuk and Ryan Sillers, with additional support from Allison Sillers and Marianne Bezier. Thank you to every one of you. Today, I have a brand new offering to share with you. As a congregation, we have experienced a lot of loss this year. for all of those losses, both personal and collective. Join us for a ritual of grief and sharing led by Reverend Laura in Fellowship Hall on Wednesday, May 22nd at 7 p.m. There we will support one another and gather with compassion and companionship as we remember together. In our congregational life this week, we are invited to our Buddhist meditation group that meets on Monday evening. Our men's group meets this next Saturday morning. Next Sunday is our May congregational meeting after service. You'll receive an updated warrant in your inbox this morning. Members are encouraged to participate in this important hybrid meeting, in person or via Zoom. For today, thank you to AJ for hosting Zoom Social Hour. Those in person are encouraged to grab a beverage and a snack from Social Hour and then join Kimberly as she leads our short family-friendly Mother's Day gathering of peace at 11:30 on the front lawn. In addition to sending a donation to UNICEF for helping children in Gaza, we are gathering today to send our love, prayers, and song of peace out to those suffering in the Middle East. We will end with brainstorming ways we can each spread peace in the world. All are welcome. After the service, Kimberly and Astrid will be accepting orders for T-shirts in Fellowship Hall, and the funds from this will go to the UNICEF to help the children in Gaza. Thank you for all who made this morning possible. Thank you for being a vital part of our congregational life. And now, please rise in body or spirit and join in singing the closing hymn, number 1074, Turn the World Around. We will sing the first 2 pages only.
We come from the fire, go back to the fire, go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water, go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain, go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life.
Please join me in our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The work of creativity and imagination is holy work. We need visionaries who can help us imagine a future where the world is different, a future under a different sun. Let us listen to, listen for, and be those visionaries, imagining a new way we build together. Go in peace.